wind howled across the empty plains, carrying the smell of dust, sage, and heartbreak. Somewhere beyond the horizon, where the sky met the dying sun, a young woman sat inside a wagon, her wrists tied with a piece of coarse rope, her face half hidden beneath a tattered shawl. Her name was Ilara, and she was being taken away, sold like an unwanted thing. Her family sat behind her in silence, not daring to meet her eyes. She had been labeled infertile, cursed, and useless for the one thing society believed a woman existed for: bearing children. They said she was barren, that no man would ever want her. And in a world that measured a woman's worth by what she could give, Ilara became nothing. The doctor's cruel words had sealed her fate. "She'll never have a child," he'd said. Her parents' eyes dimmed that day, and soon after, they struck a bargain with a man she had never met, rancher in the Western Territories. He had offered a handful of gold coins, more than enough to save their failing farm. And so Ilara was traded. As the wagon rolled through the endless wilderness, she stared at the sky, tears drying on her cheeks. She wasn't angry anymore, just hollow. At least, she thought, the sky cannot own me. By nightfall, they reached the ranch, miles of fenced land stretching into the moonlight. Horses stood quiet in the stables. The wind carried the sound of a single hammer striking wood, steady, strong, certain. And there he was, the rancher, tall, broad-shouldered, a man who looked like he'd been carved out of the very earth. His name was Cole Hartman. Cole turned when he heard the wagon stop. His blue eyes narrowed when he saw the girl climb down, her hands bound, her clothes torn. He wiped his hands on his jeans and walked forward. "Is this her?" he asked, his voice calm but edged with disbelief. The trader nodded, shoving a paper into his hand. "She's the one. Family says she's broken. You know the deal." Cole's jaw tightened. "Broken?" he repeated, his tone dark. The trader shrugged. "Can't have children. They said she's no good for a family. But she can cook, clean, whatever you need." Cole looked at Ilara, her head bowed low, not meeting his gaze. Something in him stirred, not pity, not desire, but something deeper. A quiet kind of anger at what he was seeing. He untied her hands without a word. "You're free to move," he said simply. "You're not a prisoner here." Ilara looked up then, confused. "But you bought me." Cole's eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. "I bought your freedom, not your obedience. You can stay or go when you choose." The trader scoffed, spat on the ground and rode off, leaving the dust swirling in the cold air. For a long while neither spoke. The ranch lay silent except for the distant neigh of a horse. Then Cole said quietly, "You look hungry. There's stew on the stove. Eat what you want, then rest. We'll talk in the morning." Inside the cabin, the air smelled of wood smoke and pine. A single oil lamp flickered on the table. Ilara sat by it, trembling. It had been days since she'd eaten a proper meal. She looked around, simple, sturdy furniture, everything handmade, cared for. On the mantel sat a faded photograph, a woman smiling, holding a baby. Cole's late wife, perhaps. Cole poured her a bowl of stew, then sat across from her. "I'm not the man they said I was, Ilara," he began. "I didn't buy you for what they think. I just wanted to give you a chance to start again. Out here, no one asks where you came from, only who you are now." Ilara stared at him, tears welling. "You don't even know me." He nodded slowly. "Then tell me who you are." She swallowed hard. "I was someone's daughter once, then someone's burden. Now I don't know what I am." Cole leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "You're not a burden here. You work if you want, rest if you must. The land teaches people how to live again. Maybe it can teach you too." For the first time in years, Ilara felt warmth not from the fire, but from a kindness she had forgotten existed. That night, when she lay in the small room he'd given her, she cried silently, not out of sorrow, but because someone had finally looked at her and seen a person, not a failure. Days passed. The sun rose early over the ranch, bathing the golden fields in light. Cole worked from dawn till dusk, fixing fences, tending horses, and sometimes quietly teaching Ilara the rhythm of the land. He never raised his voice, never demanded, and slowly she began to heal. One morning she woke before him, eager to work. She fed the horses, learned to saddle, and helped drive cattle. Her laughter began to return, soft and uncertain, like a bird remembering how to sing. Cole noticed but said nothing. He just smiled whenever she passed, his heart growing lighter each day. Then one evening, as the sun sank in fire-colored clouds, Ilara asked, "Why did you really buy me, Cole?" He paused, wiping his hands. "Because I saw the way they looked at you, like you were less than human, and I couldn't stand by." Her voice trembled. "You don't believe what they said about me?" He looked at her firmly. "I believe that no one has the right to decide your worth. Not your family, not a doctor. Not me, only you." Those words hit her harder than anything she had ever heard. For the first time she believed maybe, just maybe, her life wasn't over. As days turned into weeks, the ranch came alive again. Flowers grew where there had been only dust. Laughter echoed through the canyons. And Ilara felt something deep in her heart shift hope. One stormy night, lightning flashed over the plains. The roof leaked and the horses panicked. Ilara and Cole rushed to the stables, rain pouring down. They worked side by side, calming the animals, soaked to the bone. When it was over, she turned to him, her eyes shining in the lamplight. "You saved me," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "No, Ilara, you saved yourself." And in that moment, under the thunder and the smell of rain, something unspoken passed between them, a bond stronger than any promise. As the storm faded, Ilara looked out across the land that had once felt like her prison but now felt like home. She whispered a silent prayer of gratitude for freedom, for kindness, for the man who saw her worth when the world had thrown her away. And far in the distance, the morning star began to rise. The morning sun rose over the ranch like a promise. Dew clung to the grass, and the air smelled of new beginnings. Ilara stood by the fence, her hands resting on the rough wood, watching the horses gallop through the mist. Life had changed in ways she never thought possible. Once sold as something broken, she now stood tall, her laughter blending with the sound of the wind. Cole's ranch had become her home, and somehow the ache in her heart had begun to heal. Cole worked nearby, mending a fence, his shirt damp with sweat and sunlight painting his shoulders. He looked up when he saw her smile, soft, radiant, and full of peace. "You look happier these days," he said with a grin. "I am," she answered. "For the first time I feel like I belong somewhere." They ate together at dusk, shared quiet stories by the fire, and found comfort in the small things, the creak of the rocking chair, the scent of coffee, the sound of rain against the windows. Neither spoke of love. They didn't need to. It was there, unspoken, blooming in the quiet moments between words. But one morning, as the birds sang, Ilara felt a strange dizziness. She brushed it aside, thinking it was fatigue from the early chores. Days later, the weakness grew worse. Cole noticed her pale cheeks and trembling hands. "You're not well," he said firmly. "We're going to town." She protested softly, but he wouldn't hear of it. He lifted her gently into the wagon and drove through the rolling plains to the same small clinic where, months ago, her fate had been sealed with cruel words. The doctor, older now and grayer, examined her carefully, his expression shifting from curiosity to disbelief. Finally, he looked at them both. "Mr. Hartman, she's with child." The words hung in the air like thunder. Ilara gasped, her heart pounding. "That can't be." "You said—" The doctor removed his glasses slowly. "I was wrong. Nature has its own plans, and sometimes it surprises us all." Ilara's eyes filled with tears, her hands trembling over her heart. Cole reached for her, his voice low but steady. "It's a miracle, Ilara. You were never broken." On the ride back, she sat in silence, holding his hand. The plains stretched wide and endless, golden beneath the sun. "I don't understand," she whispered. Cole smiled softly. "You don't have to. Some blessings come when we finally stop believing we deserve none." When they returned, the ranch seemed brighter, as if the earth itself celebrated their joy. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers, and for the first time in years, Ilara laughed freely. Every step she took felt like a victory against the lies that once defined her. Months passed, and life settled into a rhythm of quiet anticipation. Cole built a cradle by hand, every nail driven with love. Ilara sewed tiny clothes by the firelight, her heart swelling with gratitude. "You gave me back my life," she said one evening. Cole looked up, eyes gentle. "No, Ilara, you just needed someone to remind you it was still yours." When the day finally came, the ranch fell silent under the silver glow of dawn. Pain, fear, and hope filled the air. Hours later, the first cry of a newborn echoed through the cabin, a sound that brought both of them to tears. Cole held the tiny child, his rough hands trembling. "She's perfect," he whispered. Ilara smiled weakly, tears shining like diamonds. "Do you believe me now?" He laughed softly. "I always did." Outside, the rain began to fall gently, washing the dust from the earth. Cole stepped to the window, cradling his daughter, and whispered, "You were called barren by the world, Ilara, but heaven never agreed." As the sun broke through the clouds, light poured into the room, warm, golden, alive. Ilara reached for the baby, her heart full. She had been sold as worthless, but found a love that proved her priceless. And as the narrator's voice fades, the final image lingers. Ilara, Cole, and their child standing in the doorway of their home, the prairie wind moving softly around them. Sometimes the world will try to label you as less, but love, faith, and kindness have the power to rewrite any destiny. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories of love, faith, and second chances.